Here's another example of, well, I'm going to work on this movie camera some more. And I was actually already progressing in that direction. And then I thought that I should probably record my methods for others to, learn from. So, and I wouldn't claim anything, like I'm not super advanced with this. I've just kind of gotten started and sort of catching on. And what fascinates me is how often this duplicating the self, duplicate self trick is what I think I'm going to call it. Because, well, it just solves a lot of problems with judging size and stuff. So here's what I want to do. Here's my idea. I've already printed this a couple times. And let me move this out of the way too. Let me move this back a little bit. But anyways, like I said, I've printed this a couple times now. There's a few iterations, and I'm learning and getting more confidence and ideas as I do that. So what I want to do is with this hole right here, there's a hole. And where this started from was actually, I was just going to make a simple movie camera. And it was really simple. And I downloaded an icon. So it was very cartoon, looking very simplistic. And I just kept adding stuff to it, and it got more and more complicated and also more fun. So here's my idea. I want to print something that looks like a little handle, a little crank, so that this camera looks like one of those old style that you had to crank by hand. So once again, the easiest solution, I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate. Then I'm going to Shift arrow key to the right. Shift helps it jump bigger gaps each time. And somehow this frame piece right here got grouped together with this whole camera. Come on, let go. There. And so I don't actually, wish it wasn't grouped. And to ungroup it, there's so many pieces grouped together on this, it would be madness. To ungroup it, I'm not sure how many levels I'd have to go to get this to not be connected to it. So anyways, I'll just hide it now and work with what I have. The computer's taking a while. There we go. All right, so bring this over here again, or maybe not so far because I might need a little space over here to work. So hit F to zoom in. I want to create, like I said, a handle that I can print with a different color filament and then press it so it snaps kind of interlocked into this. And I suppose if you have a 3D printer that has multiple print heads and you can print with different colors, that'd be fine. But this is my solution to that problem. So I'm going to start off with a cylinder. And I guess I can put it right there. But then I want to make it transparent so I can work with it. So I want it to be pretty well centered on that. And I'm not sure if that's quite right because, this wasn't generated from scratch. So it's probably not going to see if I go right and left. It's just not going right to the center. But we'll figure it out. I'll reduce the grid size to 0.1 if I have to. But for now, I'm going to hold Shift and grab the corner. Actually, let me undo that. Hold Shift Alt and grab the corner so it shrinks into the middle. And that's probably good. Now I'll get an angle on it, make sure it's sticking out enough. Now that it's at this size, I might try to center it. You can see it just doesn't want to center. So if I go half, I'm here, and then a little better, but it's still kind of off. So I'm going to go 0.25 and just eye it. Might as well probably just go to 0.1 and keep moving it around until we get there. See that little line? As it converges into itself, I know that I'm basically directly above it. So that might help. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Judging by the way that this donut shape looks here, that's probably pretty close, even though that doesn't quite look like it's centered on the hole itself. Anyways, good enough. And I do want it to stick out a little ways. I'm going to turn it back to that. And obviously this is going to need to be empty space, a hole, because it's going to take a chunk out of this orange and leave me with kind of like a peg shape. So I think I'll bring this down. Let's go back to 0.1. And I'm going to try to remember to comment all my thoughts so that you know what I'm thinking about doing here. So I want a little bit of it sticking out. And then I think the thing to do now is Control D and then make this taller but smaller. So basically I want to have a second cylinder so that this one's embedded in that one. So it's already there, and I'm going to make it a skinny cylinder. Shift Option or Shift Alt if you're on Windows. So there, but I need to make it taller. Yeah. So hopefully you understand what I'm getting at. I want to be able to snap a handle on this peg that looks like it can be a crank, So that's probably good. I don't want to make it too small, or it'll be brittle as we 3D print it. So now the next thing is to build the handle. And for that, I'm going to use the work plane placed on this surface. That way I can drag a shape like this onto the screen. And let's make it skinnier. Bring down the height. And let's get in alignment. I'm going to want it to be as close to in alignment with that orange edge. Probably have to go back down to 0.1. So left arrow. Yeah. And then bring this over and shift right click drag. That's probably good. Now let's maybe take a look from above. Pretty good. If anything, it probably should be a tiny bit skinnier. That looks like it's too wide. Actually, it doesn't if I look at the bottom edge. But I'll bring it in just a touch anyways. Okay, so bring it down, reduce the height. I want it to be about maybe a little bit shorter than that peg. And of course, we're going to need it to go around this way. Well, let's see. How do we want to do this? I want it to go around and be curved like that cylinder part. So I guess this would be a good opportunity for, once again, the duplicate self trick. I'm going to drag the work plane down to normal again, just so I can click on this more easily. I'm going to hit Control D, and then I'm going to use Control up arrow. Bring it flush to that. Then, well, let's see. I should probably keep bringing it up. I'm going to bring it all the way up. Yeah, I'm going to bring it up I'm going to let it float like that so I can grab the work plane and drop it right here. And then when I click on this and hit D, it'll just drop perfectly flat because that red piece was on that work plane too. Then I'll just reduce this till it's flush. Yeah, there we go. All right, so now this piece, and let me change the color of this piece just so we can really see. I'll turn it red so it matches that. So there's our handle piece, but right now it's two pieces. So I'm going to click on it and hit shift and click on that, and I'm going to group them. And then let's see, probably want to drag it over to the side. All right, so I'm going to duplicate this. hit Control D to duplicate the green. Then I'm going to shift click on the red so it grabs it too. And then I'm going to shift arrow key over to the side so we can examine what's going on. Get it away from that piece. We'll bring it back in a minute. So here's the funny thing. This piece, I want to use this piece as a whole. So we can just turn it into a whole and then click on the red piece. And then if we group them, they're the only thing selected right now, so we should be able to group them there. So it leaves a hole. And all right, so I'm going to hit F so it gives me a better view of it. While we're out here, I think I'm going to use one of these, park it right next to it, like so. My mouse, I'm using a Mac mouse, and if you're listening, Apple, your mouse thing is cool, but it is aggravating at times. All right, so what I want to do is taper this. I want the handle over here end to be smaller. So I'm going to drag this, then I'm going to rotate it. Where's my rotation arrows? Maybe I'll click over. Where is the rotate? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to rotate it just a little bit. Then we'll arrow key it back over. Maybe I need to arrow key or curve it a little bit more. So give it a little more angle. Yeah, try that. I just used shift arrow to jump large chunks. And then when it got close, I let go of shift and just arrow keyed left and right, small, tiny little increments. Okay, so since that angle is pretty good, I'm going to copy this, duplicate self, reflect it, and then just arrow key. I'm holding shift and arrow key so it goes fast. Looks like it arrived at the other side pretty much in the right spot. So I'm going to select both of these and group them. And gosh, I wish I would have thought to make this rounded, but I guess it's not too late. We'll just shrink this down by holding shift and dragging the corner. And I think I'll make it hollow while I examine the situation. So let me see, arrow key over, arrow key down, and shift right click drag. I still want it to be a circle, so I'll shift drag shift mouse drag. And then I think I'll hit down, and let's see, how is it looking? Let's look at it a little bit from the top view. I'm not sure if that's going to quite cut it. If I turn that into a solid, let me see. I guess that's not too bad, but this side looks like it's a little bit. Well, let's reduce the height so it's flush. That might help. Okay. All right, so you can see it sticking out a tiny bit right there, but that's probably not a big deal. Maybe arrow keying up would kind of solve that problem. Yeah, those are just minute problems. I mean, I see a little bit of the orange sticking out and a little bit of the red protruding too, but I think that'll be fine. And now I'm going to click on the orange and hit Control D, and I'll hit Control up arrow so it lifts up. And then I'm going to hold Shift Alt, drag the corner. And then I'll lift it up before it sinks down into it too much. Actually, maybe I need to make it really tall because that's like the handle, right? The crank. And maybe not that far. Let's say like that. That's probably good. Somebody's hand is supposed to be able to turn that. All right, so looks like I can probably group these now. Hope I didn't grab the camera underneath. Looks like I didn't. And group. And so now I've got this. Oh yeah, I still got some work to do on this peg that it's going to attach to. And really, I should probably attach it to this. No, actually, because then when I 3D print, if these two things are attached, there'll be all kinds of supports that get printed underneath. And I'd like to avoid that if I can. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to group these things because the giant camera piece is a whole and this is a solid. Or let me click off. Let me make sure these are joined. I think I do want to do that. Looks like it's not letting me click on it. Or did I? Did it? Maybe it did. Let me hit group. Yeah, okay. So that confirms that it allowed me to click on them. I thought maybe the work plane being in the way right there was stopping me, but it's not. All right, so yeah, let me grab all that and group it. And so what'll happen is the camera will disappear and it'll take a bite out of this peg shape. A little bit of processing time going on there. Uh-oh, looks like it left behind a little piece down there. And I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to hit Control Z. And the way I'll avoid that, as soon as it's done processing, poor computer's having to think about a lot. I've done so much to this project, grouping and ungrouping pieces. Okay, so to avoid that problem, I'm going to click here and just lift it up a little bit, because what was happening is it was sticking out of the bottom somehow. So now I'll group them again, select them and group them. Give it some time to process. Okay, there. And I'll put the work plane back the way it was and click on this, hit D so it drops to the ground. And now this will print and so will that. And if things go right, I should be able to snap this right on there. I guess I might want to double check. If I hit F to zoom in, let's put the work plane back right here. This is just to make sure. Yeah, because let me hit D. See, the work plane is now up here. If I hit D when I select the red, it's going to drop upwards in some strange way. That's dropping, right? And then let's make sure that that hole is exactly the size we want it to be. Yeah, it is. Sure looks like it. It's hard to tell before. I just wanted to double check. Because that's the thing about this duplicate self trick is, if that hole didn't match, I would just use this to cut a hole in that and then it would match. And I've 3D printed these pieces like this enough to know that it can end up being pretty tight. And it's much easier to just use pieces to take bites out of other pieces than to try to guess the size. Yeah, especially when you have pieces that weren't generated from scratch to the right dimensions. Like this is minus 14.7. I mean, that's, I would hate to have to work in those increments and get it right, get it perfect. All right, so now to print everything, I'm going to want to hide, to print these two pieces anyways, I'm going to want to hide everything but those. And now I'll go export and it'll just export these. So you say export everything in the design as an STL. And next step is to print. All right, so that's my ideas on how to create a handle. And if I make another video, maybe we'll hear about whether it worked or not.